So, Mr. Payne, we heard an awful lot about the legal aspects of what's, I think, referred to as the interjurisdictional agreement, whether it's an existing contract, whether it's bindable, whether we may or may not be sued, whether or not we have an obligation. Can you speak to those points?
Yes. Let me say, first of all, just follow up one thing Mr. Nichols said. The zoning ordinance speaks to the maximum height of buildings in the A1 district, and the basic maximum height for buildings there are exceptions to this, but the basic maximum height for buildings in the A1 district is 35 feet. Now, that can be increased for public buildings, this one would be a public building, to a maximum of 60 feet. By way of contrast, agricultural buildings, like a barn, for example, can be built to 90 feet. So when, I think Mr. Nichols said that this pump facility structure is about approximately 35 feet, that's the height of a more than one-story single-family dwelling. So the ordinance addresses that. The second thing, and this is getting along to your question, and that is there's been a lot of discussion of whether, to put it in sort of shorthand, whether this project is a good idea. And that's not really the subject of this discussion. This is a zoning hearing. And the issue is not whether the county is going to make money or the county is going to generate jobs or anything like that. Those are very important questions, but not for this hearing. This hearing is a zoning hearing. And the zoning ordinance has criteria for when you approve a special use permit, but a special use permit by definition is a use that either is or may be made compatible with the other uses in the area, either by its nature or by the use of conditions. That's what those conditions are for. So, for example, the obvious one is, the most obvious one perhaps, is the limitation on the intensity of the use. You can't put a pumping station, you can't put anything but a pumping station and its accessories there. You couldn't put a treatment plant, for example. You couldn't put a sewer plant. That would require another permit. It might be that the permit would be granted, but you couldn't do it under this permit. One of the important considerations of any zoning decision is the compatibility with the comprehensive plan. I think it'd be pretty darn hard to argue that this project is not consistent with the comprehensive plan when you actually amended the comprehensive plan to show this very project in the plan, and also to amend the text of the plan to include the idea of getting water from the James River.
That was a requirement of the agreement itself.
Well, it was, but let's address that in just a minute. Again, I want to look at this strictly from a zoning perspective. Those are the considerations that really are appropriate here. Whether it's going to generate 10 jobs, 100 jobs, 1,000 jobs, no jobs, is only tangentially significant as far as the zoning decision is made. The reason that Mr. Nichols has been so active with respect to this particular project is that this is a public entity that's asking for this project. It's a public business, if you will, of which Fluvanna is a half owner. And Mr. Nichols is a member of the board of directors of the James River Water Authority.
By your appointment, I don't want people thinking that this is some private business. I'm representative as the county administrator.
It's not some side job.
Just like I am in the Central Virginia Partnership and the other organizations. That's part of my job.
This is not some side job, but this is the county's representative on the James River Water Authority. So I think it's important to separate those two concepts. Now, that may be a long-winded intro to answering your question directly, but the reference that was made to the so-called interjurisdictional agreement is correct. There is an agreement between, well, it's among four parties, actually. It's among Fluvanna County, Louisa County, the Louisa County Water Authority, and the James River Water Authority, those four parties. And it does contemplate that there will be a project to bring water from the James River near Columbia to, if you will, Ferncliff. That's my word, not the words of the agreement. But some of the language of this contract says that Louisa, Fluvanna, LCWA, and JRWA, and referred to as the parties, mutually desire to enter into this agreement for the purpose of delineating their respective rights and duties regarding a water line, James River pipeline, from a point on the James River near the town of Columbia to a point in Louisa County. It's one of the whereases. One of the other whereases is the planning, design, acquisition of real property, and construction of the James River pipeline will require, among other things, a great deal of planning, engineering work, and site acquisition. Then you get into the substance of the contract, and the substance of the contract lays out who has the obligation to do what with respect to this pipeline. And when I say this pipeline, it does contemplate both pipelines, both the James River JRWA pipeline and the LCWA pipeline that connects that then to Louisa County. And there are obligations of the parties to, for various things, funding of construction, things like that. The route of the pipeline as a general or approximate location is shown on an exhibit to this document. There's a specific provision regarding Fluvanna, the first part of which is that Fluvanna will take all necessary and legally permissible steps to determine consistency with and or amend its comprehensive plan so as to make the James River pipeline shown on attachment A to this agreement a feature whose general or approximate location, character, and extent are shown on its comprehensive plan in accordance with Virginia Code annotated section 15.2-2232. That's the first thing. You have done that because you amended the comprehensive plan in, I think, 2013, to actually to show this line in this approximate location. You also amended the comprehensive plan recently in 2015 to update it, and you included that line in that recent update along with some revisions to the language that reflected the appropriateness of this pipeline as far as the zoning, the planning for the future. Then, in addition, the next provision, also in section 1.4 of the agreement, is, and I quote, "Fluvanna will take all necessary and legally permissible steps to ensure that the James River pipeline and its facilities are and remain permitted under its zoning ordinance." Now, it seems to me that there are pretty specific requirements of all four of these parties, including the JRWA, Louisa County, and the LCWA, as well as Fluvanna. Each one has different rights and different remedies. And one important aspect of this is that this agreement is what I would describe as partially executed. And that is, everything's not built out and it's not complete, obviously, but certain parts of it have been done. A notable part is the amendment to the comprehensive plan on the part of this county. The LCWA is obligated to build the line. It's had, and you saw the figures that Mr. Nichols gave you, substantial expenditures pursuant to it. So, do we have an obligation? In my opinion, we do have an obligation. The point is that this obligation was undertaken by the Board of Supervisors in 2013. I'm not going to comment on whether if Louisa isn't happy with our performance, we would get sued. as one of my teachers in law school said, you can always sue. So I'm not going to undertake to guess about that. I'm not going to undertake to predict what might happen. But I will say that I think the best way to summarize it in the vernacular, if you ask me to do that, is that when you entered into this contract, that ship left to harbor. The train left the station. The issue then is, what do you do with this zoning issue? That's what you've got to do.
I have a quick question, please. And before I forget, when you said that stipulates a point in the Columbia area, it doesn't stipulate point of fork. It doesn't get down to the nitty gritty of this is where the intake's going. So let's say, I'm just let's say,
let's say.
and like I always do, I think as I'm talking.
I like that about you. That's it.
Let's say that the point of fork is not not an accept. I'm just talking now. I'm not saying it's what I think. An acceptable location.
I'm just trying to follow your grammar.
Okay, point of fork. That specific spot where that 35-foot building is going.
This is the attachment to the agreement.
That agreement was not specific as to location.
That attachment is attached to this agreement.
Kind of showing it there.
Then why is it in writing, it's a location near Columbia? It doesn't say, it isn't specific.
It is very specific in incorporating by reference that map as an exhibit. And that map does show a point near Columbia
That's what I'm saying.
going into Louisiana.
That's what I'm saying, a point near Columbia, but it
The only
doesn't.
reason that map's like that, Mr. Olmert, is because the orange line is the Colonial Gas Pipeline from River.
All I'm saying is that it's not specific to point of fork.
not specific to the current property.
You actually worked on this agreement in 2013 with the attorney from Louisiana, right?
Mr. Lockby sitting behind you.
Right, so you were a designer of this 2013 agreement that Mr. Kenny, Mr. Cheser, and Mrs. Booker voted on back in October 2013.
Let me make one thing clear about that. This is not a personal agreement by anybody.
It was a board agreement.
This is the action of Fluvanna County, adopted by its board.
I'm absolutely aware of that.
Okay.
And there were 2 votes against it.
Still doesn't change the fact that it's the action of the board.
I'm in agreement there too.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ellenbrook, but I really didn't follow your question.
My question was that the point of fork was not specific, that 35-foot, 2.7 acre location isn't specified in the 2013 agreement, but a location near Columbia is specified.
Mr. Ellenbrook, if you're saying...
Am I wrong, or?
If you're saying that the location that has been specified in this application
Yes,
is
sir.
more precise than what's shown in this exhibit and the comprehensive plan
Right.
exhibit, I would agree with that.
Okay. That's all.
But the point about that is, James River Water Authority is the applicant, and it has chosen this site. So the issue is not whether you might have chosen, and I don't mean you personally, but I mean the board might have chosen a different position. It's whether the James River Water Authority's choice fits the criteria of the zoning ordinance. That's what you're being asked to determine.
And that's why we pass SUPs. That's why there's a request for an SUP.
I'm sorry, I had trouble here.
That's why we have this SUP in front of us.
That's correct.
And
And all the properties down there are Columbia. They're not, it doesn't contemplate the town of Columbia, it just says Columbia. But the properties
in the
that
area
are
of
under
Columbia.
consideration have an address of Columbia.
right.
But let's speak to that point for a minute too, Bob, because I think it's
Yeah.
an important one, and I think it's always very difficult. The JRWA, had multiple hearings, they had public hearings on a regular basis. They met, there was plenty of, an ample opportunity for the public to speak about where they might or might not want that. JRWA acted as a board that then reported to our boards from that standpoint. But the JRWA also had to act in the public interest. And the public interest is to pick the best possible plan and the best possible location and to keep the cost down as low as possible. Now, I'm certainly appreciative of the beauty of that area. I get that. I'm certainly appreciative of the history of Virginia in general. But we also have a responsibility to the taxpayers that we serve. And that responsibility to the taxpayers means that we want to find a solution that is as cost-effective as possible. The county administrator has pointed out repeatedly that other locations could cost anywhere from $1 million to $2 million more, just if they had been planned for. Okay, but it's beyond the planning stage now. It's in the action stage. We're here to vote on it. Were we to delay this and take it to the next level and potentially face financing in the fall?
If we ever get around to voting.
Yeah, well, we can, okay. But were we to do that, all right, it's possible that interest rates would have risen at that point in time. A quarter-point rate interest amount on $50 million is another $1.5 million. Is it fair to ask the remaining taxpayers of Fluvanna to subsidize the 3 taxpayers that are being affected by this particular SUP to the tune of anywhere between $300 to maybe $600 per taxpayer? Is that right for us to do because we think it's a pretty piece of property? I mean, I'm pretty sure if the rest of the taxpayers out here knew that we were going to, save Point of Fork, that was going to cost each one of them $300 or $600, they might have something to say about it. They might have something to say about it.
No comments, please.
Okay, so
No comments.
I'm just saying that there are the taxpayers.
No comments. You have to leave.
So there is a responsibility to the whole of the tax base, to the whole of the tax base. I am deeply appreciative of the pain that this causes to people. It is one of the worst parts of the job that we have here, okay, that we are going to make decisions that cause pain to some people and cause joy to other people. That's why we were elected. But we have to balance all of those things. We do. And I think we have a responsibility when we're told that we could be sued, when we're told that we agreed to this, when our reputation is on the line, to do the right thing.
Over all this.
Well, if we've gone over it, then why are we discussing it? If we know,
Yeah, while we're discussing it time after time, that same old thing we're going on.
Mr. O'Brien, have I answered your question?
Do we have any other comments? Are you finished?
I'd just like to speak to reputation.
I can't get a word in edgewise.
No, I'll be quiet. I think I've tried to let other people speak, so. You're welcome to ask all your questions. So can you speak to the reputation of the county and agreements in general and those kinds of things?
I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to comment on that. I think you can understand, you can infer from the nature of the agreement what I would say.
Okay, Don?
Well, I made some notes here, and yesterday my phone just about rang off the hook. And I was surprised in a way at the deep feelings that people had for this issue. And I kept track of who wanted this and who didn't want it. You know, we were just about even, about 50-50. 11 to 10 is what I had, but it might vary 1 or 2. But further than that, with us 4 board members here, I suspect that any of you can pick out from one of us your position of view. And that is the democratic problem. Whether I disagree or agree with any of them, that at least gives somebody else an opportunity to see another position. And I certainly have some different positions than some of these people on this board. And that's the democratic part of that. But I like to talk about money sometimes. It seems like some people feel that 1 penny isn't nothing, or 2 pennies not much, or we can do it for 30 years and it levels it out. Well, let's talk about money a little bit. The VRS, Virginia Retirement System, there was an article in the newspaper just recently about where they are. And it says, its unfunded liabilities are estimated at nearly $21 billion. What does that tell you? That tells me there's some incompetence there. They can't meet their promises. $21 million. And what about Social Security? Where are we with Social Security? It's nothing but an IOU up here. Is that where we want to be? I don't think we want to be there. Look at the banks that failed. They made bad decisions. Government had to bail them out. What happens when a business fails? They don't have a job. They lose money. But government never loses money, it seems like. They can always spend money. They can always find money to spend. It's your money. It's not my money. It's your money. And that's the way I look at it. I'm going to give another example. Bob brought the issue up, but I want to pinpoint this issue a little bit more. Talking about a water treatment plant. I'm going to go over the figures, which I have done some research. The county has done research on these. Everyone has these figures. Back in '07, when they built the plant, it was projected that we were going to have 98,000 gallons a day of wastewater. 98,000 today. That's what they projected. If you remember what we said a little while ago, it's 20,000. And somebody says, well, that's not the way that the other place is going to go. I found a statement that someone said here tonight that really caught my ear, and I've heard it many times. If they build it, it will come. Well, we built the water treatment plant. It didn't come.
Sewer treatment, sir.
Sewer treatment plant. It didn't come. So does that mean that, it doesn't necessarily mean failure, but what are we going to do with the debt that we have? Several of you brought it up. Over $100 million. We want to add another $10 million to it. We want 2 plants going at the same time. We want DOC, Department of Corrections. We want them going, and we want the Louisa deal. The DOC wasn't good enough for some people. 75,000 gallons a day wasn't enough for the water. They had a waste treatment plant of 125,000. I say you walk, I say you crawl before you walk. That's where I'm coming from. But it has to be grandiose. Some of the people are just making it from paycheck to paycheck. Have we forgotten that? There's most of us can pay the taxes. I can pay those taxes. But there's people out there I know who don't have that extra penny or penny and a half or 2 pennies. They're out there, but we forget about those. It's not my money. I should be frugal with it. And a lot of people like to make fun of someone who's frugal. I'm sorry, I'm frugal. And that's where I'll be, and I'll be frugal with your money. Mr. Nichols, he gets a lot of criticism. But he takes his orders from the Board of Supervisors. His positions are what the Board of Supervisors has told him to take in the past. So he follows those decisions. He's an honest man. He has integrity. Just because I disagree with him or his presentations doesn't mean that I don't think highly of him. Do you know how much debt we have for every man, woman, and child in this county? How much debt is there? Do you realize where we are today? That's not the add-on of another $10 million. It's only $10 million they're talking about. It's $3,800 for every man, woman, and child in this county. And they want to add more. Well, we can do it for 30 years. Hey, why not do it for 40 years? It'd be less. That's the attitude of government anymore. Do it longer, stretch it out, and make your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren pay for all this. Because we were, several years back, and I've repeated this before, we were 13th in the state of Virginia in debt per capita, ranked among all the other counties and localities. We were 13th. I believe sometimes we're going for number 1. I don't want to be number one. I want to be maybe in the middle. And do we need to raise taxes sometimes? Yes, we do need to. But there is growth. But every solution is thought of as, well, here we haven't taxed this, well, we haven't, that's all you hear from government. Their solution all the time is to spend more money and raise more taxes. I don't believe in all that. I never have. I'm frugal, and I think I should be frugal with your money, and I will be as long as I'm on this board. So that's basically what I had to say, and I don't want to add to $101 million in debt, and I love Fluvanna County. Thank you.
So, Mr. Weaver, what money are we setting aside right now for the next school that we're going to need to build? How are we doing that right now? Are we doing it?
What's your solution?
No, I'm asking you, because...
I'm not going to get in an argument. You want to argue all the time.
I'm not arguing with you. You're saying that you're looking out for the taxpayer's dollar, right? But are we currently putting money aside for our CIP projects? Are we? It's a simple question.
I'm not getting an argument. You want to argue with me every time we start talking, and you go ahead and make your statements. I've made my statement.
You're acting as if you're saving the taxpayer dollar by not doing something today. But the reality is, not doing this today will cost the taxpayer a lot more money down the road. We've just been told we'd likely be sued. We might be sued and have to pay for it and get nothing from it. Is that smart? Okay. Is it smart when we put the reputation of the county online because we break business deals? Is it smart when we tell the rest of the world you can't do business with Fluvanna? Is that saving the taxpayer any dollars? If you're willing to sit down and say, yes, I'm going to start funding CIP programs, I'm going to pay for that new fire truck, I'm going to pay for that 911 system, I'm going to make our core services better, and as Joe Thomas himself said, you need to raise the rate to about $1.25 if you want to be a veteran community. If you're willing to do that, if you're willing to take care of the services that our county needs, then do that. Okay? But don't argue for fiscal conservatism when you're doing the very least of all the counties in the area, and you're not competing. And so when property values drop, and when people leave this county, and when a county fails, you can look at it and say, I was a conservative. Okay? Spending a half a cent right now, a quarter of a cent right now, to solve long-term water and infrastructure needs for our county for generations to come, that is not being fiscally inconservative. That is as good of a deal as you will ever see. And I know you like good deals. And I know you care about the reputation of this county. And I know you care about the people. But this isn't a way to do that. Okay? Saving a quarter of a penny right now is not going to solve that problem. And you do not have a solution for the $500,000 or the jail board. You don't have a lever that you can provide for that. So when we sit down at budget season in a few weeks, and we've got to talk about raising that tax rate above 90 cents, the only solution you will have is to cut something.